And they're off. The Tour de Fleece has officially begun. Hello, my name is Trent and I'm the Weft Right. Welcome to my tiny fiber studio. Today I'm starting a 3-part series in honor of the Tour de Fleece. If you're not familiar with this event, it happens every July, this year from June 29th through, I think, July 19th. And it takes place over the same time span of the bicycle race, the Tour de France. And it is a time for spinners to come together and spin every day for this entire period and see how much they can get done. Part of the Tour de Fleece, of course, is preparing the fleece. I once was a baby spinner who said, I will never prepare my own fleece from raw because that's just too much involvement. And I quickly learned that I actually really enjoy it, especially doing small batch preparations. Not everyone wants to prepare a whole fleece. Maybe you only want to prepare a pound or two at a time. So I've come up with techniques that work really well for this small batch processing. So during this 3-part series, I'm going to cover the scouring of the wool, which is the video we're doing today. We're going to cover the carding of the wool, and we're going to cover the spinning itself, which I'm really excited about. Also, in this 3-part series, I'm going to introduce you to some of my spinning wheels, my 3 favorite spinning wheels, and I'm really excited for you to get to meet them. So with that said, let's get started and see how I scour small amounts of fleece.
My first step when I scour wool is to heat up my kettle and fill my basin with hot tap water. I like to use water that's around 120 degrees, though the lanolin in the wool really starts to melt as low as 108 degrees. But I find that after a 20-minute soak, the water temperature cools significantly. So my tap water doesn't get quite as warm as I would like. In fact, if I use a thermometer, I see that my tap water is somewhere around 112 to 114 degrees. And to get to that 120 degrees, I have to use boiling water from my kettle. After adding the boiling water, I get to that perfect 120 degree temperature. That way, after a 30-minute soak, the wool is still underneath a layer of melted lanolin as opposed to lanolin that begins to solidify. I really like to use Unicorn Power Scour. You need very little. I only use about a tablespoon for this entire amount, and it works incredibly well, especially at removing dirt and dust. This is my Gulf Coast native fleece. I always pull out a lock so that I can see the difference, the transformation after I scour the wool, and just for keeping records. I'm not going to recommend this seller. I bought this pound of wool on eBay, and honestly, it's very dirty and it has a lot of vegetable matter in it, or VM, so I'm not going to recommend them. But as you see, I'm simply adding it to the hot water with the power scour in it. I am using gloves, not because I'm afraid of the dirt, but because I want to be protected from the heat. I use these baking racks all the time when I'm scouring wool. I find them really, really effective for pushing the wool around and for weighting the wool so that it won't float up to the top. This allows the lanolin, which is melted, to rise to the top. After 30 minutes, I use the rack on top of my basin to collect and let the wool drain a little bit. You've probably noticed that I'm not particularly delicate with the wool. I've seen videos of people scouring wool 100 years ago, and they were literally dunking it into boiling water and stirring it with a spoon, and they apparently had no issues with felting. I know from processing wool in woven goods that it takes significant effort and rubbing to be able to felt wool. So I have no real fears in wringing out this wool to get rid of the dirty water or in agitating it. as long as it's not constant, it really takes about 5 to 10 minutes of constant agitation to felt, I find. You can see how dirty this water is. I can't even see if there's any wool left in it because it's so dirty, so I have to feel around very carefully. And I'm still wearing gloves because the water is still quite warm even after 30 minutes. Now, Power Scour is a wonderful product and is fully bio-friendly and biodegradable, so I can just dump it directly into my yard, even though I hear it's very good for your garden. I haven't tried that. Next, I fill the basin with some more clean water. This time I'm using just hot tap water, no boiling water. I'm using a tablespoon of Power Scour again, and I'm going to give a second wash. There's not really much lanolin left in it. That melts away in that first hot bath. But a second wash can be very helpful, especially with very dirty wool. You'll see that the water doesn't get as dirty this time. And because I can see in the water better, I can pick out some larger pieces of VM. After agitating some, I will weight down this wool with my baking rack again and allow it to sit for another 30 minutes. You can still see that some dirt is left in this wool, and that's why I think the second wash is important. After that soak, the water is cool enough that I can use my hands without gloves, and I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to collect the wool, wring it out with my hands to get out as much dirty water as I can. Let the wool sit on the drain board as I'm working with the rest of it. And then once again, the Power Scour is biodegradable and biosafe, so I can just dump this water out into my yard again. You can see how much whiter the wool is after 2 washes. Power Scour doesn't necessarily need to be rinsed off as it's safe for the wool. There are no enzymes, but I usually like to do a final rinse just with clean water, just to make sure that I get any extra dirt off. So once again, here's some clean water. I don't use it as hot as it can be, usually a medium temperature coming out of my faucet for this rinse. And I also don't soak. I just agitate the wool a little bit with my hands. Once again, cleaning off any large pieces of vegetable matter or VM. Going to squeeze out the rinse water. It should be very clear. And next, on to spinning out the wool. I absolutely love my Ninja spin dryer. I recommend any fiber artist use this. I bought it years ago to use for processing yarn for dyeing, and it is amazing. Some people use salad spinners, but this can hold a lot more and spins a lot faster. It's a really simple device. It just takes standard outlet electricity, and it spins incredibly fast. You'll see how quickly the water starts leaking out of the drainage hole. If you're doing this inside, you can simply put a pan or a pot underneath this area to catch the water. And I let it spin until only a drip is coming out. This has significantly increased my productivity because the wool is pretty much dry once it comes out of the spin dryer. I let it sit for only about 30 or 40 minutes outside on a warm day, and the wool is dry and ready to process, which is very amazing. You can see how light and fluffy it is after the spin drying. So I use 2 racks on top of my basin to set the wool out for its final drying. As I said, it's mainly dry already. And here is that original lock. You can see the transformation from cleaning the wool. Now let me introduce you to my very first spinning wheel, Winnie. She is an Ashford Traditional circa 1975. Here's some footage of me spinning on Winnie this past fall. This is my favorite wheel to spin on. I really enjoy the single treadle as opposed to my double treadle wheel, as I think it's a little more comfortable on my hips. It's really a pleasure, easy to treadle, a good height, and I can't believe I got this wheel for only $75. All I needed to do was add the brake band and the brake tension knob. Everything else was perfect. This is the wheel that I will be using during Tour de Fleece this year, as it is most comfortable and I can spin the fastest on it.
Well, there you have it. That's how I scour my fleece. It's a really pretty easy process. Most of the time is spent waiting in soaking baths. You may have noticed that I'm using a bus tray from a restaurant supply or from Amazon. They're my favorite type of container or tub to do my scouring in. They're very sturdy. They handle hot water well. They're easy to sanitize and clean. I'm going to put a link for that, as well as the Unicorn Power Scour and the baking racks that I use, in the description below. If I can find a good link, I'll also find one to the Ninja Spin Dryer. I know that their prices have gone up a little bit lately. I bought mine probably almost 5 years ago now. So we'll see if we can find a good link for that. I really hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you especially enjoyed meeting Winnie, my very first spinning wheel. She is honestly my favorite, and I really enjoy working with her. The only things that I really did to alter the spinning wheel, I did recently, and I've really appreciated it. You can see here that I added a alligator clip near the orifice so that I could have a place to clip my yarn when I'm going to prepare more fiber or I need to step away from my machine. And then I also added a small eye screw to be able to hang my orifice hook off of. So that makes it just a little more user-friendly for me because I'm not always spinning near a table. Well, I hope you'll join me and subscribe, because the next video we're going to cover carding, and I'm going to do a review of a drum carder, and I've not seen a single person review this particular brand of drum carder on YouTube or anywhere else. So I hope you stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.